Hi, third graders. Back for some more Charlotte's Web. The last chapter we read was chapter 7. It was called Bad News, and it was all about Wilbur hearing the story from the older sheep that he was being fattened so that the farmers could then kill him for Christmas dinner. Obviously, Wilbur was not very happy about that and extremely concerned. But no need to worry because Charlotte, his newfound friend, came in to save the day and said that she would figure out a plan to save Wilbur. So we'll see how that plan unfolds. We are on chapter 8 right now, V11. So 5111 is 8. And this is called The Talk at Home. On Sunday morning, Mr. and Mrs. Arable and Fern were sitting at breakfast in the kitchen. Avery had finished and was upstairs looking for his slingshot. "Did you know that Uncle Homer's goslings hatched?" asked Fern. "How many?" asked Mr. Arable. "7," replied Fern. "There were 8 eggs, but 1 egg didn't hatch, and the goose told Templeton she didn't want it any more, so he took it away." "The goose did what?" asked Mrs. Arable, gazing at her daughter with a queer, worried look. "Told Templeton she didn't want the egg any more," repeated Fern. "Who is Templeton?" asked Mrs. Arable. "He's the rat," replied Fern. "None of us like him much." "Who is us?" asked Mr. Arable. "Oh, everybody in the barn cellar. Wilbur and the sheep and the lambs and the goose and the gander and the goslings and Charlotte and me." "Charlotte?" said Mrs. Arable. "Who's Charlotte?" "She's Wilbur's best friend. She's terribly clever." "What does she look like?" asked Mrs. Arable. "Well," said Fern thoughtfully, "she has 8 legs. All spiders do, I guess." "Charlotte is a spider?" asked Fern's mother. Fern nodded. "A big gray one. She has a web across the top of Wilbur's doorway. She catches flies and sucks their blood. Wilbur adores her." "Does he really?" said Mrs. Arable, rather vaguely. She was staring at Fern with a worried expression on her face. "Oh, yes, Wilbur adores Charlotte," said Fern. "Do you know what Charlotte said when the goslings hatched?" "I haven't the faintest idea," said Mr. Arable. "Tell us." "Well, when the first gosling stuck its little head out from under the goose, I was sitting on my stool in the corner, and Charlotte was on her web. She made a speech. She said, 'I am sure that every one of us here in the barn cellar will be gratified to learn that after 4 weeks of unremitting effort, the patience on the part of the goose, she now has something to show for it.' Don't you think that was a pleasant thing for her to say?" "Yes, I do," said Mrs. Arable. "And now, Fern, it's time to get ready for Sunday school. And tell Avery to get ready. And this afternoon you can tell me more about what goes on at Uncle Homer's barn. Aren't you spending quite a lot of time there? You go there almost every afternoon, don't you?" "I like it there," replied Fern. She wiped her mouth and ran upstairs. After she had left the room, Mrs. Arable spoke in a low voice to her husband. "I'm worried about Fern," she said. "Did you hear the way she rambled on about the animals, pretending they talked?" Mr. Arable chuckled. "Maybe they do talk," he said. "I've sometimes wondered. At any rate, don't worry about Fern. She's just got a lively imagination. Kids think they hear all sorts of things." "Just the same, I do worry about her," replied Mrs. Arable. "I think I shall ask Dr. Dorian about her the next time I see him. He loves Fern almost as much as we do, and I want him to know how queerly she is acting about that pig and everything. I don't think it's normal. You know perfectly well animals don't talk." Mr. Arable grinned. "Maybe our ears aren't as sharp as Fern's," he said. Another quick short chapter with only 2 vocab words, queer and vaguely. Hopefully you had a chance to quickly look those up before we read. Another interesting chapter. So all of a sudden now, Fern's mother is concerned that she's spending too much time at the barn because she's talking about the animals having conversations. Which at some points definitely would make you think if a friend came up and told you that their cat started talking to them, or a bird was singing to them with actual words instead of the way that animals normally communicate. But that's the best thing about this fictional story is that we know it's not real, and obviously people do have great imaginations, which is wonderful. So we will prepare ourselves to see what happens. Hopefully, Fern can still continue to visit the barn, because we know Wilbur would probably be very upset if Fern stopped coming to visit. And the next chapter we have is called chapter 9 is called, let's see, Wilbur's Boast. Wilbur's Boast. So do your best to find the definition of boast, and you'll have a little bit of an idea about what Wilbur is boasting about in this next chapter. Okay? Miss you guys. Bye.